Chapter 41 Honesty. You are listening at Audio. Vade likes the Weasley twins very much. They are the kind of people who will try to bring joy to others even in the most desperate situation. He originally just wanted to stop them from continuing to commit suicide, but looking at their bright expressions, he couldn't help but think, why should I hide the truth for Voldemort? Voldemort tried every means to hide his true identity because he was afraid of Dumbledore. What good would it be for Vader to help him hide it? On the contrary, if Vader is the only one who knows a secret, then once the other party finds out, his situation will be very dangerous. But if the secret is spread, it will be Voldemort who will be in trouble. Thinking of this, the entangled mood of hiding the secret suddenly became clear, but Vader didn't want to really spread the news completely, leaving Voldemort with no way out. After all, Dumbledore couldn't kill him completely now. Voldemort only hid his identity in school to seize the Philosopher's Stone. What if he found that he had no hope of seizing it, and he went on a killing spree in anger? The students in the school were no match for him at all. I don't know how many people would die before Dumbledore arrived, he said carefully, actually. The Weasley twins' eyes lit up. Let's find a quiet place to talk. For Wade, the safest place besides his dormitory is the Umbrella House. He remembered that there was a hidden room of requirement in this school, but when Wade watched the movie, he only paid attention to the plot and special effects and didn't pay attention to the specific location of the room of requirement. So now he has been looking for it for 3 months, but he still hasn't found it. In order to avoid the same situation as the movie plot when the protagonist is talking about a crucial secret, there is a pair of eavesdropping ears behind him, which leaks the secret to the villain, causing a series of tragedies. They came to the Umbrella House. The holiday is about to start, and everyone's enthusiasm for learning has also decreased. At this time, there are only 2 people in the Umbrella House. Hermione is almost blocked by the high pile of books, and she looks exhausted from reading, and Ryan brought a pile of wood and is making a new target. Wow, is this your secret base? Fred was the first to stick his head in and look around. Soon, a red-haired head came in beside him, took a look and greeted him, saying, "Hello, Miss Know-It-All." "Oh, I'm not good." Hermione said depressedly, "Does anyone know who Nick Flamel is? He is not in the Great Wizards of the 20th Century or the Directory of Contemporary Famous Magicians. His name cannot be found in major discoveries in modern magic and research on the development of modern witchcraft. I have almost flipped through 100 books. Is he not written into the book at all?" Several people inside and outside the room were stunned at the same time, and then said in unison, "What are you talking about, Hermione?" "That's Nick Flamel, of course he is in the book." Hermione slowly raised her head and blinked, with a rare look of distressing confusion on her face. "You all know Nick Flamel?" "Of course." Ryan lifted up a target and said, "He celebrated his 665th birthday last year, and it was published in the Daily Prophet. My father said he might be the oldest person in the world." 665 years old. Hermione repeated in disbelief. Fred said, "Nick Flamel is the greatest alchemist, and the only Philosopher's Stone in the world was made by him." Philosopher's Stone. Hermione thought she must have seen this term in that book. George said, "The Philosopher's Stone can turn any metal into pure gold, and it can also make the elixir of life. My biggest dream when I was a child was to own a Philosopher's Stone. Turning stone into gold. Immortality." Hermione repeated. Wade, who turned around and closed the door, couldn't help but complain, "Hermione, have you become a repeater?" Although Fred and others didn't know about repeaters, the meaning was simple and easy to understand, and they all laughed out loud. Hermione looked at Wade eagerly. "So Wade, you don't know Nick Flamel, do you?" Wade explained simply, "I've been learning alchemy recently, and the first thing I read was his work." "Alchemy?" Ryan was surprised. "That's a 6th grade course." "Yes, but I can start to lay the foundation from now on." Wade asked, "Isn't Theo with you today?" "He went to help Professor Sprout clean up the greenhouse. I remembered that the target that was broken last time could not be repaired, so I just made a few new ones." Ryan explained, patted his clothes, put down his sleeves and walked over, picked up the water cup and drank water. Wade gave him a clean up, to get rid of the tiny wood chips. Fred sat astride the chair and poked Hermione. "Hello. Are you okay? Are you still alive? Do you know what day it is?" Hermione, who was lying on the table, stretched out her hand and slapped Fred's hand that was waving in front of her eyes. She sat up and said angrily, "If I had known, would have asked directly. I have been looking for more than a month." Wade flipped through the books on her table, all of which were about modern and contemporary magic history. Of course, Nicolas Flamel could not be found in this way. He was born in France in the 14th century and was written in an earlier book. "Hermione, why do you want to check Nicolas Flamel?" Ryan asked with concern. When Wade was not around, Hermione always generously answered everyone's questions, and everyone had long regarded her as a true friend. I just. Hermione originally wanted to say it was nothing, because explaining the reason revealed that they violated the rules and broke into the restricted area in the middle of the night, but when she raised her head, she saw that everyone around her was looking at her with concern. She has magnanimous eyes and a sincere expression. This made her feel extremely ashamed for her concealment. "It's like this," Hermione hesitated, and finally told them about their adventure, and how she, Harry and Ron went to visit the gamekeeper Hagrid after the Quidditch match. Joan let them know that the thing guarded by the three-headed dog was related to Dumbledore and Nick Flamel. It seems that the big dog must be guarding Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. Hermione finally concluded, "I dare say Flamel asked Dumbledore to keep it for him. He knew that someone was paying attention to the Philosopher's Stone. And he was friends with Dumbledore, so the Sorcerer's Stone was placed in Hogwarts." Hermione glanced at Vader and did not say what Vader had guessed last time, although she now felt more and more that Vader was right. The whole thing might have been a test given by Dumbledore to Harry, but let other people know that Vader was right. Students knew that the headmaster was giving special treatment to a particular student, which was not a good thing for Harry. What it means to be in the limelight, just look at how Harry, who had just entered school, was chased and intercepted by his classmates. Hermione knew that her friend had been deeply troubled by this. "Then who's thinking about the Philosopher's Stone?" Ryan asked. Hermione said, "Harry and Ron both thought it was Snape because his leg seemed to have been bitten by a three-headed dog. But I think..." Before she finished speaking, George suddenly said, "Kaluo." Hermione was stuck for 2 seconds before saying, "What does it have to do with Professor Quirrell? Although I don't think he is very qualified." Chapter 42 Let Dumbledore Decide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Weasleys looked at Vader. Wade thought for a while, and did not mention what he knew about the plot. He just repeated what he heard that day word for word. He has a good memory in this life, and even though more than a month has passed, there is almost no deviation in the retelling of the conversation. Invisibly, there seemed to be a chill rising from the soles of my feet. There was a long silence in the umbrella house, and no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Fred broke the silence. "I gotta say, this joke isn't funny at all. Did you get it, George?" George nodded silently, his face unusually pale. "So," Ryan struggled to understand and frowned. "Professor Quirrell is not Professor Quirrell. No, should I say, a dark wizard has possessed him? He wants to kill Harry Potter. The defense against the dark arts professor is a Death Eater." He looked around at everyone, as if expecting someone to suddenly shout, "Did it scare you?" "Ha ha ha." But no one spoke. Ryan sat down holding the table, and after a while he said with hope, Should we go find Professor Dumbledore? All Death Eaters are afraid of him. As long as Professor Dumbledore takes action, we will definitely be able to." Hermione shook her head slightly and said softly, "No, you don't understand, Ryan. He stepped on my corpse and became a big star. Think about this, Ryan. Who else would say that?" "Woolen cloth." The blood disappeared from the boy's face bit by bit. Ryan clenched his fists and his body trembled slightly. "But, it's impossible. That person is dead, isn't it? Everyone knows that he is dead, by Harry Potter." He seemed to have bitten his tongue suddenly, and his voice stopped abruptly. Hermione looked at him pityingly. She could tell that the boy actually believed it, but he just didn't dare to admit it. It seems that if you don't admit it, that person will not be resurrected. This was nothing to laugh at, for she too felt a shiver. Hermione, who was born in the Muggle world, should have had no interest in Voldemort. but she had read a lot of books before entering the wizarding world, so she understood better than most students born in wizarding families, that whose name must not be mentioned man has caused many shocking tragedies. Before that man disappeared, his power had reached its peak, and a terrifying shadow shrouded the entire British Isles. Even Dumbledore. The world said that the man was most afraid of Dumbledore, because the war never stopped. Burning to Hogwarts, but not even Dumbledore could stop the series of deaths. This made Hermione subconsciously have a deep fear of that person, but when she wanted to say his name, she opened her mouth, but couldn't say it directly. It seems like it will awaken some terrible monster. Float. I mean, the mysterious man. Hermione looked at everyone and said, if the mysterious man is really possessed by Professor Quirrell, I think we should tell Dumbledore. Vader, why did you do that at that time? Didn't you find Professor Dumbledore immediately? Vader thought for a while. Maybe it's because I find it hard to believe that Dumbledore knows nothing about this. Fred nodded. Dumbledore must have discovered Quirrell's abnormality, but for some reason, he has not dealt with it. George said seriously, he knows everything. But what if? Hermione asked back, what if Dumbledore is just suspicious but still looking for evidence? He may think that Professor Quirrell just surrendered to the darkness and doesn't know that the mysterious man is in him. We should find Dumbledore, tell the truth, and let him decide what to do. Of course, Hermione, you are right. Ryan said, of course it should be done. Then why don't we act now? Fred stood up resolutely. I saw Dumbledore in the auditorium during dinner. He must be at school now. But Hermione didn't expect him to be so decisive. She asked hesitantly, should we call Harry? I mean, the person the mysterious man wants to kill is him. Harry should know where the danger will come from. Vader thought for a moment. Like you said, Hermione, let Dumbledore decide. Hermione thought about the test he said and nodded silently, her eyes full of worry, as if she was worried that Harry would be killed by Voldemort on their way to find Dumbledore. Standing in the corridor, Wade took out a bright silver whistle and blew it. A loud whistle penetrated the air sharply and urgently, and after a while, an owl spread its wings and flew over from the west tower, passed through the window, and landed accurately on Wade's outstretched arm. Cool. Fred whistled. The owl. Ava tilted her head and glanced at him, then called cuckoo twice. Vader rolled up the written note and let Ava hold it in her mouth. He warned, give it to Professor Dumbledore, and then bring me his reply. Ava nodded, spread her wings and flew away. Everyone watched as it circled in the sky, then spotted the window on a small spire and flew in. Hermione bit her finger and said worriedly, Professor Dumbledore will not take our letter seriously, right? Maybe I should write a more detailed letter in the letter to let him know that we are not messing around. Fortunately, Dumbledore didn't keep them waiting for too long, maybe only a minute or two, before Ava flew out of the window again. The owl handed the reply to Wade. On the parchment, it was written in a long, thin, circle with circle font. Welcome to my office. The password is Cascading Sunday. Cascading Sunday? George muttered, I don't think I've seen this dessert in the auditorium. Fred said, there was one at the end of term dinner last semester. What were you doing then? By the way, you secretly stuffed a bottle of cockroaches into Mr. Monta's body. Let him think he bought a pile of cockroaches. George remembered the prank at the time and laughed. He never ate cockroaches again after that. Wait, you took the opportunity to steal my sundae. How can you say it's stealing? Fred argued, I took it openly, but you didn't see it. The two of them were playing and joking, and they came to the entrance of the principal's office together. On the way, they happened to meet Michael, who was coming back from the Quidditch field. He greeted him and naturally integrated into the team. No one thought there was anything wrong. There was an extremely ugly stone gargoyle crouching at the entrance of the principal's office. Fred avoided George's attack, jumped to the front and said, colorful sundae. The stone beast jumped to the side, and the wall behind it split in two. Behind it was a slowly rising spiral staircase. Several people walked in one after another, and there was a bang behind them, and the wall closed again. The stairs took everyone higher and higher, and Wade was secretly amazed in his heart. In the Muggle world, escalators are of course very common, but this is the first time he has seen such a thing in the wizarding world, so why should we be the same as muggles in this regard? The elevator is always installed where the principal needs it. When everyone was a little dizzy because of the stairs, they finally saw a shining oak door with a brass door knocker in the shape of a griffin. This is Dumbledore's office. Chapter 43 Dumbledore. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fred strode forward, knocked on the knocker, and the oak door opened silently. Dumbledore's office is very strange. The walls are covered with portraits of old headmasters. Some are sleeping, some are looking at them with interest, and some have only an empty frame. The long-legged table, covered with curious silverware, whirled and puffed out small puffs of smoke. The sorting hat was placed on a board and seemed to be asleep, making a slight snoring sound. Behind the door, on a tall gilded perch, stood an extremely beautiful bird. Its feathers are golden and red, and although they are a little sparse, they are still dazzlingly beautiful, and its eyes look down at everyone with very smart eyes. "Oh my God!" Hermione whispered, "It's actually a phoenix. I read in a book that Professor Dumbledore has a real phoenix." Albus Dumbledore sat behind the table, wearing a pair of half-moon glasses on his aquiline nose and wearing a dark purple robe printed with fleur-de-lis. He sat on a high-backed chair and looked at everyone gently with light blue eyes. "Welcome, kids. I hope you're not bored in my office." "How so?" "This place is so interesting, Professor," Fred said boldly and lively. Dumbledore chuckled softly and said, "You said in your letter that you have something very important to tell me? You can tell me now." Everyone looked at each other and urged with their eyes. Hermione also chickened out at this point, as she too had been forced to violate the ban and was reluctant to surrender. In the end, Wade had no choice but to stand up and repeat the conversation he had heard before. Others added to their guesses. Michael's face gradually turned pale. He didn't expect that they were going to the principal's office to talk about such a serious matter. He looked from this to that, feeling as if he was the only shocked person at the scene. Dumbledore didn't show any surprise after listening patiently. His eyes that seemed to be able to see through people's hearts turned to Wade and asked, "When you heard this conversation, are you sure he didn't notice it?" "I had used the fire spell before that. I don't know if he noticed any traces of the spell. But as soon as Professor Quirrell entered the door, I hid. I couldn't be seen from the angle of the window." Wade said carefully, "Before he left, I made sure that I made no noise, did not use magic, and had no obvious smell on my body. I waited outside the window until early morning before going back, and on the way out I met Griffith's portrait. And Professor Murray." In the subsequent defense against the dark arts class, Professor Quirrell did not pay special attention to me, and his attitude did not change significantly. Dumbledore nodded slightly and added, "For the time being, it seems that he has not noticed it. But I want you to remember one thing, from today on, try not to think about this matter, and don't look at Professor Quirrell. Do you understand?" Wade nodded silently. "Professor." Ryan couldn't help but ask, "Why don't you catch him? Before he knows he has been exposed." "It's not yet time, Mr. Carrow." Dumbledore said patiently, "Actually, at the beginning of this semester, I found that some heartbreaking changes seem to have happened in our Professor Quirrell. The information I brought also confirmed my worst suspicions, but it's not time to expose him yet. But don't worry, I asked a very reliable person to monitor him and ensure the safety of the students." "So Professor, is he really?" George asked softly. "I think so." Dumbledore confirmed their guess. Voldemort has returned to this school again, in a state that no one can imagine. But he probably didn't expect that his wonderful disguise would be used by a few of you. A child discovered that, he always has a habit of looking down on those who are not as powerful as himself. "Oh, in fact, your performance is very good." "But, didn't everyone say that Voldemort was killed by Harry Potter when he was still a baby?" Fred asked. "He was indeed severely wounded and disappeared from sight on the night he tried to kill Harry. But he was not really dead, I have always been sure of that." Dumbledore said, "Voldemort is now in a rare state, even the death curse cannot easily kill him." Fred looked confused, but Dumbledore had no intention of explaining in detail. "Professor, can I tell Harry this?" Hermione asked carefully. "I don't think so, Miss Granger," Dumbledore said politely and unquestioningly. "But since Voldemort killed Harry's parents, I don't think it's a good idea to let him know that his enemy is right in front of him." Dumbledore said, "I'm afraid Harry won't be able to deal with it calmly and rationally like you. This will give him a huge risk, so I need you to keep it secret, especially to Harry. Can you do that?" Everyone nodded together. Fred muttered, "But the mysterious man wants to kill him. In order to ensure safety, do we have to let Harry leave the team?" Wood will cry. George forced a smile. He said that Harry was the best seeker he had ever seen. He pinned all his hopes of winning the championship on Harry. "Oh, about that," Dumbledore crossed his arms and smiled and said, "I don't think you should give up the joy of Quidditch just for the eyes of the dark. So, yes, Harry does not have to leave the team, I will ensure his safety." After getting his assurance, the Gryffindors were relieved immediately, in the hearts of the little lions, who could be more reliable than Dumbledore. Several people happily prepared to say goodbye, and when they were about to leave, Ryan hesitated and stopped. "Professor Dumbledore." "What?" "One more thing," Ryan hesitated and hesitated. "Just say it, Mr. Carrow." "Professor Quirrell." Ryan mustered up his courage and looked up and asked, "After you drive away the mysterious man, what will happen to Professor Quirrell? Will he be okay?" Ryan asked. Faced with this question, Dumbledore, who had always been calm, finally changed his expression. He looked deeply into Ryan's eyes, and his eyes were slightly moist. "I'm afraid not, child." Ryan opened his eyes wide. In order to be able to attach to him, Voldemort did terrible things to him, very terrible. They formed an evil symbiotic relationship. When Voldemort leaves, Quirrell will inevitably die. Everyone fell silent. For these 11-year-old children, watching someone around them irreversibly heading towards death, even if he is a bad guy, they began to feel sad in their hearts. "Children, you sympathize with him and even want to save him. This is a very noble character." Dumbledore lowered his eyes and said kindly but coldly, "But when Quirrell sold his soul to Voldemort because of greed and ambition, this was already a doomed result." Leaving the principal's office, several people had mixed feelings. "Dumbledore really knows everything." Fred said, "Did you see? He is not surprised at all. It's hard to imagine." Ryan said, "We are only in the first grade, and we have to experience this kind of thing, war, mysterious people, death. I thought these things should be far away from us. And Professor Quirrell, well, I heard that he used to be very good." They stood at the corridor. Outside was covered with snow, and some little wizards were shouting and playing snowball fights in the yard, including Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. "Dumbledore is right," Hermione said suddenly. Wade was puzzled. "Huh? Harry shouldn't be told the truth." Hermione looked at Harry with a pitying, motherly look. "Otherwise, the heavy reality and hatred will overwhelm him. Don't talk about this." Wade reminded, "Remember what Dumbledore said, we should try not to think about it, and don't look at that person. It's better to stay away from him." Hermione nodded silently. Michael looked at Wade, hesitant to speak. Wade asked him with his eyes, but he shook his head and said nothing. After returning to the lounge in the evening, Michael avoided everyone and whispered, "I thought you would resent Dumbledore. He knew everything, but let the students face danger. You almost died, Wade." Chapter 44. The first alchemical work. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wade suddenly turned to look at Michael. Michael looked at him strangely. "Have you never thought of questioning him about this?" Vader, "Indeed not." The plot he knew clouded his thinking to some extent. Vader knew from the beginning that Voldemort was behind Quirrell's head, and he also knew that no one had died this year. He had a sense of superiority as a traveler and a prophet in his heart, and even had a game-like mentality. When he suddenly discovered Voldemort's secret, he just pretended that he was not careful and did not blame anyone else. At this time, under Michael's gaze, he carefully sorted out the whole thing from scratch, including his own thoughts and Dumbledore's possible considerations, as well as the final ending of these people in the plot. he found that he still wouldn't question or resent Dumbledore. Why? Michael asked puzzledly. He is the principal, he should protect our safety. Then what can I gain by questioning him? Wade asked seriously. Watch Dumbledore repent. Or let him apologize to me. What's the use? Resenting Dumbledore for this will keep us away from each other in the future. Is it dangerous? Michael was speechless. There's no point dwelling on what has happened, Michael. Vader finally said, yelling at the only person who can protect us. Questioning him, and contradicting him are even more stupid. Only by being favored can we be confident. We don't. If you are favored, you should not indulge in venting your emotions. Michael was silent for a long time and asked softly, don't you feel aggrieved? No. Vader said, if I learned anything from this incident, it's that. First, don't place all your hopes on others. Second, those who have power can do whatever they want. Third, when you can't beat others, you have to endure it. That's the way the world is, it's always been that way. Vader spoke sensibly to Michael, but in reality, he was not completely unaffected. Several nights, when he woke up in the middle of the night, a green light representing death seemed to flash in his dreams, and sometimes there was the hideous and cruel voice of a noseless bald monster. In the second half of the night, Wade looked at the stars on the ceiling. He couldn't fall asleep for a long time, so he simply got up and read a book. He began to spend more time studying in alchemy. In the last week before Christmas, Vader finally completed his first alchemical work. On the pale yellow parchment, golden rays of light formed a very complex and regular geometric figure. The inner and outer circles slowly rotated at different speeds, and the ancient magic texts alternately flashed with golden light. Vader could clearly see the path of magic flowing through it, the way the spell worked. He could even vaguely feel where things needed to be adjusted and where materials needed to be replaced. After a while, he felt his eyes were astringent, so he closed them and rested for a while. When I looked again, there was just an ordinary piece of parchment in front of me. After completing his first alchemy work independently, Vader's eyes changed again, and new functions appeared. After being able to see other people's real names and how to cast spells, Vader discovered that he could also see the magic drawings, magic flow patterns, spells used, and engraved magic texts in alchemical items. But you need to concentrate and be very focused to see. As soon as your attention is slightly distracted, that special vision will disappear. That's a good thing, but Vader really wishes his golden finger could give him an instruction manual. At first, he thought that he would be suitable to be an Auror in the future. Nothing about polyjuice potion or human body transformation could be hidden from his eyes. Later, he felt that he was probably suitable to be a teacher. Each student received one-on-one targeted tutoring, and the excellence rate was not 100%, but at least 90%. Now Vader felt that he was probably a born alchemist, but if he had never been exposed to alchemy in his life, wouldn't he never be able to discover that his eyes could see more magical things? During tutoring on Thursday, he handed over his repeatedly adjusted work to Professor Murray. Oh, let me see, a piece of parchment. Professor Murray put on his glasses and stopped Wade's intention to introduce it. He first slowly touched the seemingly ordinary parchment with his long and thin fingers. Ordinary parchment, with a little mercury, stonefish oil and mountain sage added. It's not a special material. Professor Murray muttered the incantation in a low voice, shaking his fingers slightly, checking the magic circuit on it. Transformation spell, association spell, elimination spell, and concealment spell. Very clever idea. He looked at Vader with surprise and sparkling eyes and said, I guess you still have the same parchment in your hand, right? Yes, Professor. Wade laughed, took out a self-bound notebook from his bag, and said, actually, I still have a pile of them. Professor Murray smiled. He sat down and thought carefully for a while before writing a sentence on the paper in his hand. Extraordinary wisdom is mankind's greatest wealth. The strong and powerful fonts appeared on the two parchments at the same time, and the content and position were exactly the same. That's true. Professor Murray checked again. The structure of the magic circuit is very stable. Even I can't change it. There is almost no restriction by distance, and information can be transmitted in an instant. He stood up as he spoke, and walked back and forth in the room several times, muttering something that no one could hear clearly, and his eyebrows seemed to be flying. After a while, Professor Murray turned around, strode to Wade, stretched out his hand to hold his shoulder, and said excitedly, "Child. Do you know? You will change the world. This is a great invention that can change the world. Merlin. It is more meaningful than all my inventions so far. It's hard to believe that you are only 11 years old. This is a piece of parchment, but it is more than just a piece of parchment. It will change the way all wizards communicate. Why didn't anyone think of it in the past? It is so simple, and so great." Looking at Professor Murray's shining eyes and somewhat crazy attitude, Wade's heart began to beat violently. He resisted not to retreat, his fingers curled slightly, and he almost couldn't help but reach for the wand. In an instant, countless precedents flashed through his mind, such as Song Jiwen, who killed people for poems, and Newton, who suppressed and persecuted other scholars. Wade's heart instantly became alert, as if he had returned to that day. He heard Voldemort's voice through a wall. Dumbledore's calm, light blue eyes seemed to be staring at him. Wade secretly pinched a button-sized bean. This was a safety insurance he prepared for himself. He tried to remain humble and calm, and said with a smile, "It's not my invention, I just borrowed the precedent of Muggle network communication. Without the professor's careful guidance, I would not have been able to make it successfully." Chapter 45, Friend's Account. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Vader certainly knew the importance of phone. But he thought that when the Muggle world already had mobile phones and the internet, there was nothing to make a fuss about when an instant communication device appeared in the wizarding world. Moreover, wizards already have a double-sided mirror that can be used as a video call tool. The advantage of parchment is that it is cheaper, and the spells are simple and easy to understand. It can be said that the prerequisites for its creation have been created by wizards hundreds of years ago. It has been in place for many years, but I don't know why. No one seems to be thinking in this direction. Wade kept a smile on his face, hoping that Professor Murray could understand what he meant. You can discuss the research results if you want, and share the glory with everyone. Don't fall out on impulse, let alone take action. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to fight back. Vader didn't really believe that Hogwarts with Dumbledore was absolutely safe, and it wasn't difficult to use. Forgetfulness, and the imperious curse. But Professor Murray didn't seem to understand. He retorted without thinking, "Why doesn't it count? The American continent existed thousands of years ago, but Columbus, who discovered it, is also called a hero. Dumbledore discovered the dragon, the 12 uses of blood. Haven't people studied dragon blood before? Of course not. There is no shame in standing on the shoulders of giants. The important thing is that you are the first to invent it. Write 2 letters. Vader's racing heart slowed down. He suddenly realized that Professor Murray had no intention of occupying his alchemy results at all. He was simply happy for Vader. It's just that Professor Murray's expression was too extrovert and his eyes were too excited, which made Wade feel threatened. He slowly adjusted his breathing and heartbeat, realizing that there was something wrong with his current mentality. Because of Quirrell and Dumbledore, he now has extremely low trust in the school's professors, and subconsciously speculates on them with the greatest malice. But in fact, Professor Flitwick was gentle and enthusiastic, and Professor Murray had been helping and guiding him since they met. He really shouldn't have doubts like this. Professor Murray had no idea what was going on in Vader's mind. He wrote a few lines and suddenly asked, "By the way, Vader, what is the name of this work of yours? It should have a name, right?" Wade said as calmly as possible, "Yes, I call it, Book of Friends." He wrote Book of Friends on the paper, but felt that it was missing a bit of charm, so he wrote Book of Friends in Chinese characters. "What is this?" Professor Murray curiously poked at the 3 words that were as elegant as paintings. "The Chinese characters for the Book of Friends." Wade explained and read it again in Chinese. Professor Murray imitated it awkwardly, thought about it for a moment, and smiled. "Not bad. This can become your unique trademark." He buried his head and continued to write. "Vede, have you applied to stay in school during the holidays?" "No." Wade sat next to him. "My parents have been looking forward to my coming home. On the 3rd day after Christmas, I will hold a small party at home. You must remember to set aside time on that day. Professor Murray said, I can introduce to you to you very helpful friend. Of course, my pleasure, Professor. Because of the guilt in his heart, Wade is now particularly easy to talk to. Also, your book of friends is kept secret for now. Don't make it public. Professor Murray blinked and said with a smile, I will give you a surprise during the holidays. The remaining doubt still lingered in his heart. Wade subconsciously became vigilant and said hesitantly, Actually, I originally planned to give it to my friends as a Christmas gift. If the response is good, just sell it on a small scale among classmates to make some pocket money. Oh, Vader. Professor Murray raised his eyes and looked at him, as if looking at a young child, and smiled softly, My child, you are still young, so you don't understand. There are two kinds of alchemists in the world. One, people who have learned a little alchemy and work in the Ministry of Magic or various companies are called alchemists, but they are actually just the labor force of capital. The other kind of alchemist is me. He tapped his finger on his chest, then pointed at Vader. And you? Vader opened his eyes slightly. Surprised? Do you think this statement is too early for you? Professor Murray asked as if he could read minds. Vader nodded. I thought, it was just a simple little thing. I have just started in alchemy. Professor Murray smiled and shook his head. The person who invented the quill must have thought it was just a simple little thing, but we have been using it for more than 1,000 years. He wrote the letter, stamped it with his own seal, and let the owl send it away. Finally, he told Wade, small gifts between friends don't matter, but forget it about selling them yourself. Your time should be spent on a more useful place than to be a hawker or craftsman. In the evening, Wade finished making all the friends' books that he planned to send out during the holidays and returned to his lounge. He lay exhausted on his bed, thinking about all the people he'd met here, Quirrell and Voldemort wandering around the castle, Dumbledore, who coldly puts the lives of all teachers and students on the chessboard, is also the guardian of this school. Don't you feel wronged? Michael asked him. Ryan said, I thought these things were far away from us. Fred said, Dumbledore really knows everything. Hermione said, Dumbledore is right, the heavy reality and hatred will suffocate him. And Harry Potter, the boy who survived, Ved covered his eyes with his hands and looked like he was asleep. A soft pop suddenly sounded in the room, as if a bubble burst. Ved immediately opened his eyes and turned his head to see the house elf Zoe standing in the middle of the dormitory. You are here, Zoe. Ved smiled, thank you for agreeing to my request before. Zoe whispered, Ved Grey needs help. Zoe is of course willing to help him. But Zoe has not received the signal, so I came to see him. Because I was not in danger today, Professor Murray is better than I thought. Ved took out a green bean from his pocket and showed it to Zoe. This is the communicator between them, and Zoe also has one in her hand. After completing the Book of Friends, Wade also made this small magic bean, using the association spell and the transformation spell. As long as he squeezed it hard, the bean in Zoe's hand would heat up. Ever since the chance encounter with Quirrell, Wade has been thinking about how to ensure his survival. Dumbledore has his own plan, and the professors of the school will not ignore Dumbledore's orders to be his bodyguard. The only ones who can be used and are willing to help him unconditionally are the house elves of the school. Fortunately, he has a good relationship with the house elves in charge of the Ravenclaw Tower. This strange creature can apparate in any corner of Hogwarts, and its magic is even stronger than some adult wizards. Although they cannot disobey the professors of the school, helping a student escape from danger does not violate their duties, so Wade made an agreement with Zoe. As long as the magic bean in his hand heats up, Zoe will come to him immediately and take him to a safe place quickly. Before meeting Professor Murray today, Wade brought the magic bean. He prepared for the worst, but luckily it didn't come to fruition. Chapter 46 Notice Prohibiting the Use of Magic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The house elf looked at him with a childlike clear eye. Is Vid Grey sad? Vid was stunned, sighed, and turned the magic bean in his hand and said, It's not sad, right? I just suddenly found that my thoughts were a little too, dark. He swallowed the word and said, Should it be called paranoia? I used very bad thoughts to speculate about a professor who was full of kindness to me. Ved Grey is not wrong. Zoe suddenly said loudly. Zoe. Professor Murray is a good man, but Ved Grey is right to be vigilant. Zoe nodded vigorously. Zoe knows a defense against the dark arts professor who tried to have a bad relationship with a third-year girl and was sent to Azkaban. Zoe also knows a defense against the dark arts professor who used dark magic on students and was also sent to Azkaban. There is also a defense against the dark arts professor who took advantage of the students' trust to invite him to a party, and then contacted dark wizards to kidnap students and extort ransom. Weed laughed. He is also in Azkaban. Zoe shook her head. The wrong spell made his wand explode and he died. It's all defense against the dark arts professor. This position is really weird. Weed complained. The defense against the dark arts professors change very quickly, and there are many bad people. Quirrell is also bad. Weed Grey must always be vigilant. Zoe said seriously. Weed sighed. I will. When he woke up in the morning, Weed waved his wand and looked at the time. Golden words appeared. 7 a.m. Today is Friday. They don't have classes in the morning, and most students don't get up early. When Wade walked through the common room, there were only 2 fifth-year students sitting in front of the fireplace reading books, poor senior high school students. Wade felt sympathetic. He used his wand to conjure a ball of blue flame and put it in a bottle. With this, he wouldn't be too cold even when he went outdoors. Tomorrow Wade would take the train to leave school. He decided to go to the library after breakfast and borrow as many books as possible so that he wouldn't waste time when he went home. After spending a morning in the library, when he returned to the hall, Wade found that Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were there, busy arranging Christmas decorations, and immediately stepped forward to help. Ah, Wade, thank you. Professor Flitwick said happily, we're going to hang all those ribbons on the wall. Several people worked with wands, hanging bright ribbons on the wall, 12 towering Christmas trees on both sides, hundreds of candles lined up, coiled around the Christmas tree under the command of Professor Flitwick, and burned quietly. The tip of his wand also sprayed golden bubbles, hanging on the branches. Professor McGonagall gently tapped the ice crystals hanging from the branches with her wand, turning some of them into shiny little animals or small bells. The students in the hall were amazed by the effortless transfiguration. More students came to help, and they gave full play to their creativity. Some turned into golden stars, some turned into deer with their heads held high, and some made several sleighs run over the hall, showing an excellent level of magic, which made the 2 professors add a lot of points to the college. Of course, there were also failures in transformation. A Slytherin boy originally just wanted to make a few candles, but he didn't expect the spell to go wrong. The tip of the wand suddenly exploded, and his whole face turned black, causing others to laugh. Soon, the hall was completely renewed. Michael, who came downstairs to eat, said tangledly, you know, Wade, I miss my family very much. But, he fiddled with the branches with his fingers, and the ice hamster hanging on it immediately squeaked. Christmas at Hogwarts seems to be very interesting. He looked like he wanted to stay. Wade, Michael, you are all here. West, the 6th grade male class leader, strode over and took out 2 pieces of paper and handed them to them. Come, sign this. Michael took it. Notice prohibiting the use of magic during holidays. Why should I sign this? I am a wizard. Yes, underage wizards. West nodded perfunctorily and urged, hurry up, I still have to find Anthony and the others. Wade looked down at the notice. According to the law on reasonable restraint of underage wizards need to pay attention to the following prohibitions during the holidays. First, wizards under the age of 17 are minors and are prohibited from using magic outside of school. Second, minor wizards should consciously abide by and uphold the International Confederation of Wizards Statute of Secrecy. Minor wizards need to know that any magical activities that may attract the attention of non-magical members, muggles, are serious violations of the law. Third, knowingly using magic in front of muggles is a crime and will be warned by the Ministry of Magic. In serious cases, they will be expelled. There are 7 or 8 prohibitions behind, but they all say one thing, no magic is allowed, and no information about the magic world is allowed to be disclosed to Muggles. Wade has seen in books about the history of magic that Muggles have been hunting wizards on a large scale since the 15th century. Although wizards are often more powerful individually, their social structure is completely decentralized. Wizards need to rely on the Muggle world for food, clothing, housing and transportation except for travel, which often exposes their identities. For more than 200 years, many wizards were persecuted to death by Muggles. In particular, because wizard children cannot control magic, they easily attract attention and are arrested, imprisoned or even burned to death. In order to protect the wizard community, the Statute of Secrecy was established in 1692 and has continued to this day. It is still strictly observed and is the iron law of the wizarding world. Of course, wizard books only record the persecution of wizards by Muggles, but do not record the reasons for the sudden deterioration of the relationship between the two sides, nor do they record the counterattack and revenge of wizards against Muggles. Now, I don't know whether it is to ease the hatred between Muggles and wizards and avoid intensifying the conflict. Their textbook history of magic is vague about this period of history, and the focus is on the deeds of the weird Mtlnovel Aud, very strange and powerful witch who enjoys the feeling of being tied to a stake and burned, and deliberately changes into different appearances to let people catch her 47 times. History of magic uses this special example to prove that the practice of burning witches is completely nonsense. But in fact, many witches were really tied to stakes and burned to death. Of course, there are actually more ordinary women who were mistakenly burned as witches, or rather, the vast majority of them. Wade looked at the notice. A complex magic circuit appeared on the seemingly ordinary parchment. Under West's urging, he did not have much time to study it, so he could only pick up a pen and sign his name. As he signed, Wade felt that something invisible, like a contract, was entangled with him. "Don't think you can use magic secretly at home," West finally warned. "Minor wizards have traces on them. Once they use magic, they will be discovered by the Ministry of Magic immediately. Every year, there are 2 or 3 idiots who receive warning letters from the Ministry of Magic. I hope you will not be one of them." Chapter 47 Gift Friendship Book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 47 Gift, Book of Friends. The time in school is heartbreakingly short, and the time to leave school comes almost in the blink of an eye. When the first-year students lined up and left behind Hagrid, the few students who chose to stay in school stood by the window and looked at them with envy. But in fact, Wade is also envious of these students. They can stay in school freely for 2 weeks, have almost exclusive access to the library and potions classroom, and can consult professors at any time, which is almost a one-on-one tutoring. Vader sighed. If Fiona hadn't been looking forward to the day he came home a month ago, Wade would have really wanted to stay in school. Of course, it feels good to be home. After being away from home for half a year, the longing and love accumulated. By his parents burst out almost the moment they saw him. Fiona hugged him at least 10 times a day and kissed his forehead lovingly from time to time. Ferdinand was a little more reserved, but he touched his hair and patted his shoulders from time to time. During the few months at school, Wade grew 3 centimeters taller. Because he climbs stairs all day long and sits for a long time, he will exercise for 10 minutes to half an hour. Over time, his body becomes stronger and he can even see more obvious abdominal muscles, but all these good changes can only be seen in 2 words in Fiona's eyes: lost weight. Mother touched Wade's face and said distressfully, "Did you not eat enough at school? Just wait, I will prepare a big table of delicious food for you today." That she was ready to get to work. Wade looked at the mirror. The 11-year-old boy in the mirror still had some baby fat on his face that had not faded away. He looked a little round, fair and rosy, and looked good. Ferdinand sat next to Wade and asked with a very serious look on his face, "Vede, in your letters you have always only reported the good news but not the bad news. Now tell me the truth, is anyone in school giving you a hard time?" Wade also said seriously, "No, this is true. Ravenclaw itself is an independent college. Most of the classmates only care about ability, not many people care about blood, and I have been in several. I am the first in my grade in every class. Professor Flitwick, the dean of our college, likes me very much, and Professor Murray. He devotes 2 hours a week to teaching me alchemy, and even invited me to join him before the holidays. Private party. That's good, it sounds like you have met some good teachers. Ferdinand smiled, are you happy in school? Of course, Wade smiled, I'm very happy. Before Christmas, Wade mailed out all the gifts. When he woke up the next morning, he came downstairs and saw gift boxes piled under the Christmas tree. Fiona walked over to him, hugged his head, kissed his forehead hard, and said happily, thank you, dear. I like the gift you gave me very much. Vader gave her a bottle of beauty potion he brewed himself, which was a finished product approved by Professor Snape. Ferdinand also nodded, a great magic razor. But does the parchment you put in the gift box have any special use? This is the alchemy work I completed independently, the Book of Friends. Wade said with a bit of pride. He took out a book that he had bound by himself from his pocket. On the cover was written Book of Friends in both Chinese and English. When he opened it, the top of the horizontal line on the first page was the handwritten word family. On the right side, name is written in smaller font, followed by a horizontal line. Wade took out a quill pen and gave each of his parents one, and wrote his name on the right side of the pen. Our 3 friend accounts are related. Write the name like this, and then I write what I want to say here. He wrote a line in the blank space below the line, Merry Christmas. Fiona let out a small exclamation, and saw a line of words appearing on the parchment in her hand. Vade, Merry Christmas. Oh, I get it. Fiona quickly wrote her name in the upper right corner, and then wrote below, Merry Christmas, baby. The same words also appeared on the parchment of father and son. Ferdinand understood, it's like a forum. Home computers have been around for many years, and the price only costs a few £100. Naturally, the Grey family bought one early, as they are all familiar with computers. Yes, it's like an internet forum. Vader spread his hands. Because the carrier is just a piece of paper, it seems a little more magical. It can't transmit video and sound. In fact, it's not as good as the internet, but it is not affected by the magic magnetic field. So that you can contact me at any time even if I am at school. To be more precise, Book of Friends is a magical version of WeChat. It's just that nowadays, things like MSN Messenger, WhatsApp, QQ, WeChat, etc. have not yet been developed, which makes Wade's Book of Friends very advanced. I have to say, this is the best Christmas gift I've received this year, Vader. Ferdinand's eyes sparkled. But what's even better than this is that you really learned something at Hogwarts. I'm proud of you, kid. Fiona soon became addicted to online chat like most people who come into contact with communication software for the first time. Even if Vader and Ferdinand were less than 2 meters away from her, she would always use the friend account to communicate. Soon, text began to appear on other pages of Vader's friendship book. The second page is associated with SSC members. Michael, hello. Padma, Merlin, I really saw what you wrote. Hermione, can you see what I wrote too? Oh my God, it really appeared. How did you do that? I didn't see a similar spell in the book. Padma, forget about the book. Hermione, today is Christmas, you should be happy. Michael, Wade, I thought you were just starting to learn alchemy. You should have told me earlier that you made such a great thing. Theo, I read the instructions and just figured out how to use it. It's amazing. This is the best magic item I've ever seen. Ryan, I'm so shocked that I don't know what to say. Just write a sentence to prove that I saw it. Neville, I accidentally fell off the sofa, and my grandma thought I received some dark magic item and almost confiscated it. Wade, Merry Christmas, everyone. His words seemed to ignite the frying pan, and everyone's messages popped up one after another. They soon discovered that the space occupied by each line of text was limited. It would take about 1 or 2 seconds for each sentence to disappear after reading. At most, only 15 lines of text could be displayed on the page at the same time. The online chat was forcibly limited in speed, so that there would not be a situation where 999 plus unread messages appeared in just a few minutes. In a few minutes, they quickly learned to send emoticons without any guidance, and it seemed that they would not be able to stop for a while. Wade turned to the third page, which was the house elves page. The house elves who had a close relationship with him all received one. They carefully tried to write words on the parchment and wrote many words of gratitude to Wade. Next came Professor Murray, Professor Flitwick, Professor Sprout, Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape. Except for Snape, who gave a barely usable evaluation, and Professor Murray reconfirmed the invitation in 2 days, everyone else praised his wonderful ideas and said that they could also tutor him during the holidays. Chapter 48. Everyone else has it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a while, the friend account gradually became quiet again, and Wade guessed that they might be busy creating other chat groups. Among the Christmas gifts he gave, of course, there was not only the book of friends related to himself, but also blank parchments related to 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and 5 people. The professors also added an extra. The stack is for 10 people, and together it is a thick booklet, so it can be called a book. In Vader's vision, in the future, students at Hogwarts will all have a book of friends, and they will exchange parchments with friends or family members and establish large and small chat groups. Maybe Hogwarts will add a school rule soon: you are not allowed to open the friends account during class time, and it will be confiscated if you violate it. Or maybe students will compare the thickness and value of their friend accounts. In order to save face, some students will buy blank parchment and put it in it, pretending that they have joined many chat groups, but Professor Murray asked him not to sell the book of friends for the time being. Seeing that a road with a long way to make money was cut off, Wade sighed dejectedly. Put away the friends list and start opening your own gifts for this year. Among the many gift boxes under the Christmas tree, most come from Ferdinand's employees. Wade has been wandering around the toy factory with his father since he was a child. He is smart, sensible, and cute. Many old employees like him very much. Even though they haven't seen him for more than half a year, they still send him gifts. They gave away various toys popular among ordinary people, exquisite pens and notebooks, children's books, etc. Some of them were gifts given to him by Wade's Muggle classmates in elementary school. These were relatively simple, most of them were candies, greeting cards and small toys. These are things he receives every year, and of course Wade gives them gifts of similar value in advance. Then came the gift from the wizarding world. Unlike Wade, who sent everyone away with the same gift, the gifts everyone gave him were various books. Professor Murray gave him a handwritten alchemy notebook, which Wade carefully put away and planned to read after dinner. Professor Flitwick gave him a copy of the Encyclopedia of Spells. This book requires the professor's approval in the Hogwarts library before it can be borrowed, and Vader also planned to take time to read it during the holidays. Michael gave a copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Hermione gave The Alchemist. Padma's gift was Gilderoy Lockhart's Wandering with Werewolves. Theo's gift was The World's Oldest Man Magic Plants. Ryan's The Beauty of the Starry Sky. Neville's The Secret of Transfiguration. Perhaps his image of loving reading was deeply ingrained in everyone's minds, and everyone unanimously chose to give him books. It seems that he is quite busy this holiday. Hogwarts. When Dumbledore got up in the morning, even the shoes placed by his bed were inundated with gifts. He has been a professor at Hogwarts for almost a century and has taught countless students. Almost 80% of the wizards in the British Isles are his students, and he is also the president of the International Federation of Wizards, the chief wizard of the Wizengamot, and is recognized as the greatest wizard of our time and the greatest headmaster of Hogwarts ever, although Dumbledore himself is not so fond of these titles and accolades. He cares, but obviously, most people care about it. There are wizards all over the world who want to have a good relationship with him, so every Christmas, Dumbledore would receive many gifts that could almost overwhelm the headmaster's tower. Fortunately, he used the traceless stretching charm very well, so Dumbledore usually spent the entire week after Christmas opening presents. This is an activity he enjoys. Of course, Dumbledore was not motivated by the value of the gift itself, but because he could see some people's growth, some people's desires, and occasionally some small surprises, maybe a curse, or maybe a harmless one. Prank. Most people who didn't know him would give him books out of respect for the wizard, Muggle and wizard books, many of which Dumbledore had already read, but still happily accepted them. People who know him well know that this old man is a hopeless lover of sweets. His gifts are often cakes, chocolates, piles of cockroaches, sizzling bees and other sweets, and some of them contain deadly potions. Their process was a fairly interesting game for Dumbledore. there are also some people, even though they don't normally communicate with each other, still have gifts given on this special day. Even if it was just a piece of paper, a leaf, or a pair of unsightly wool socks that smelled like sheep, Dumbledore would treasure them with great care. Just as Dumbledore was opening a gift box that was half a man's height, an owl suddenly flew in through the window and dropped a small package on Dumbledore's lap. Could it be that someone just remembered him when he woke up in the morning and then gave him a replacement gift? Dumbledore thought like this, put down the gift box, and opened the small package first. There was only a piece of parchment and a long thin note. Dear Albus, this is the work of my student, Vader Gray. I am extremely proud to share my joy with you. Best wishes, Maury. Even the all-knowing Dumbledore was confused by this letter without beginning or end. He unfolded the parchment and looked at both sides, making sure that there was nothing written on it except Moray's own name. Dumbledore was about to use a spell to check it when someone else came to visit him. Dumbledore walked to the hallway, and Phileas Flitwick stood at the door, holding a similar parchment in his hand, and said happily, "Oh, Professor Dumbledore, this is my one. I have to say, I knew he would achieve extraordinary success, but I didn't expect it to be so early. He has only been learning magic for 3.5 months. Wade Gray?" Dumbledore asked tentatively. "Yes, who else could it be?" Professor Flitwick walked away with a brisk step and humming a song. Dumbledore looked down and saw that there was still nothing on the parchment Flitwick gave him except Flitwick's name. Then came Pomona Sprout. "I thought, who else can I give this to besides you?" The witch smiled gently and said, "I look forward to your contact at any time." Then it was Minerva McGonagall. She saw that Dumbledore already had a small stack in his hand, and handed him one with some displeasure. "Oh, I thought I was the first one," but Pomona was so quick, that in fact, she opened the other gifts first, and when she found this one, it was a little late. The last one was Snape, who handed over a notebook directly. "Humph." The potions professor said coldly, "I kept my own one, and I don't need the others. Useless contacts will only waste my time." Dumbledore, so everyone has one, only he doesn't know what it is. Chapter 49 Love is the Greatest Magic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wait, Severus. When Snape was about to turn around and leave, Dumbledore stopped him and asked frankly, "What is this?" That he raised the parchment in his hand. Snape was stunned for a moment, and then his eyes became a little strange. "You don't know?" "Obviously, I'm not as omniscient as people boast. In fact, I often feel that I know too little." Snape looked up and down at Dumbledore, as if he saw a giant monster dancing ballet on tiptoe. The corners of his mouth curved slightly, as if mocking or gloating. "It's really strange, someone actually gave me a Christmas present, but not to the great Dumbledore." Snape's harsh tone did not change Dumbledore's color. The old headmaster just drew out his wand and waved it at the gift boxes in the room. The potions professor couldn't help but look over his shoulder. The gift boxes swayed slightly, and then stopped. Dumbledore sighed regretfully and said, "It seems that there really is none." "Oh." Snape responded dryly, he had just seen it. Dumbledore's room was piled high with gifts, almost to the ceiling. Thinking of the few gift boxes in his bedroom, Snape suddenly lost the mood to laugh. In fact, he didn't care about the number of gifts at all, he just didn't want to see other people's unintentional boasting faces. Snape flicked his finger, and a note shot at Dumbledore like a bullet. "This is the instruction manual." When Dumbledore caught the note, Snape had already turned around and strode away. The white-bearded headmaster pushed his glasses, then looked down, and soon figured out how to use it. "Oh, can it replace the invention of the Muggle phone?" "Very interesting idea." That he chanted a spell and checked the magic on the parchment, or the friend's book. "Ingenious idea, genius combination." It seems that Mr. Gray's study of alchemy has begun to bear fruit, and he is very talented. No wonder Murray is so proud. Thinking that he was the only one who did not receive a gift, Dumbledore recalled the expressions of several children that day and vaguely understood something. So that's it. A smart and sensitive child. Is that so? Unlike Harry, this child should not like to be guided by others. That he seemed to be talking to himself, but soon, an old, subtle voice sounded in the room. "Ralph rarely sees such an 11-year-old child." The voice said, a bit like Albus Dumbledore at the time, also like Tom Riddle at the time, smart, insightful, and different. Dumbledore looked down and said modestly, "Oh, then you have overestimated me a bit. When I was 11 years old, I knew as much about alchemy as all ordinary children." At the point where his eyes fell, standing in front of the fireplace was a very old house elf. His skin was wrinkled, and he was wrapped in a tea towel with the Hogwarts emblem. His ears were full of fluffy white hair. He was so thin that his body seemed to be easily broken, but his big green eyes were very clear. He said in a whispering voice, "Albus Dumbledore is so arrogant. He said this, which means he is different from others and thinks he should know everything. Don't be so blunt, dear Ralph." Dumbledore said helplessly, "You see me too clearly, and often make me feel ashamed." He wiped his glasses, sat in front of the table, and asked softly, "Help me sort out these gifts, okay? I need to write something." "Ralph is willing to serve, master." The house elf bowed, stepped back a few steps, and stretched out his slender fingers. The gift boxes piled in the room unpacked themselves, the books quickly got into the bookshelf and arranged neatly, and the clean food jumped into the cabinet, and the cabinet door closed with a click. Various greeting cards and letters fell into several boxes and were neatly stacked on the table, waiting for Dumbledore to check them when he had time. Other items were placed in various corners of the room. As for the problematic gifts, they gathered together and were ruthlessly squeezed and crushed by magic. Not long after, Ralph disappeared from the room with these garbage and things like wrapping paper. There were only 2 or 3 gift boxes left on the table that were not opened. Only Dumbledore could open them personally. While the elves were busy, Dumbledore wrote his name on each friend's book, Albus Dumbledore. All the professors who stayed in school during the Christmas holidays had no family, and they might not even have relatives. They all chose to give one of their friends' books, which were limited to one-to-one contact, to Dumbledore. So Dumbledore, who did not receive a friend's book as a gift on Christmas, still had a thicker friend's book than anyone else this morning. After putting away the friend book, Dumbledore sat at the table and thought for a long time. The light and shadow of the years passed before his eyes, creating ripples in the depths of his blue eyes. Are they similar? Of course they are very similar. Thinking back carefully, the look in the eyes of Weed Grey in the crowd that day was so similar to his younger self, but Dumbledore would never forget how he had messed up his life. After pondering for a long time, he carefully picked up the pen and wrote a letter. "Dear Murray, I have received the gift brought by your owl. I have to say that it is very clever, even great. It is hard to imagine that this is the work of an 11-year-old child. Of course, its composition is actually simple and easy to understand to some extent. But it is even more amazing because of its simplicity. I think you can understand what I mean. I can almost see that it will bring earth-shaking changes to the wizarding world in the future. To be honest, this makes me happy and scared. For such a talented child, what kind of education should we give him? The last time I met such a smart and terrifying student was 50 years ago. You should also remember that student, Tom Riddle. I will not be so arrogant as to think that my personal attitude determines Voldemort's life. But I have to admit that my education of him was undoubtedly a failure. A talented precocious person, his emotions were restrained by his thoughts, and he was isolated by his own wisdom. Even if he stood among countless people, he was lonely, because his mind and sharpness would make it easier for him to see the selfishness, greed, ugly desires, and paranoid arrogance in human nature. He would keep a certain distance from others, and use humor, kindness, or politeness to disguise his inner disappointment and indifference to human nature. He would be more likely to lose his way than those clumsy children. You know, I'm not just talking about Tom Riddle, nor just Wade Grey. Therefore, I have some perhaps immature suggestions for your student Wade. Dear friend, when we adults face children who are much younger than us, we often become unconsciously arrogant because we have more knowledge and experience. We look down on those children with a sense of superiority, holding absolute power like a monarch, instilling the information we want them to know, keeping the information we think they should not know, manipulating them with words, and guiding them in the direction we want to see. What arrogance is this? What's more dangerous is that we often don't realize this arrogance, because we think we are making the right decisions to make them better people. I can't say that this is absolutely wrong, because children's thoughts are often immature, and they don't know how to restrain their words and actions. If they are not properly guided, they can easily go astray and cause harm to themselves and others. But for students like Wade Gray, ordinary education may only have the opposite effect. If I have learned anything from my many years of failed education, it is that love is the most difficult and powerful magic in the world. It is mysterious and hard to guess, but it can change everything and decide everything. Chapter 50 Dress Robe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On Christmas Day, the Gray family had a big meal, watched a musical, and took a lot of photos. The old-fashioned camera used was a Christmas gift from Ferdinand to Vader, and Fiona's gift was a developing potion. This is a camera I bought in Diagon Alley. They said it can also be used in Hogwarts. Ferdinand said with a smile, this way you can take pictures of your life in school. The owner of the ice cream shop in Diagon Alley told me that as long as I use the correct developing potion, the people in the photos will move. Fiona said excitedly, so what are you waiting for? Let's take pictures today. But after taking the photos, they discovered that even a small thing like developing photos required a wand, but Vader couldn't use magic at home. Looking at the disappointed Fiona, Wade suggested, actually, we can go to the Leaky Cauldron and stay for one night. There are many adult wizards there. Even if magic is used, the Ministry of Magic can't determine who did it. Received a warning letter. Fiona was a little moved, but she still shook her head. Forget it, if you are discovered, it will have a bad impact on you. Anyway, you will be back to school in a few days. As she spoke, she became sad. Before Wade left, she was already missing him. Ferdinand frowned and said, Vade, is the accuracy of the Ministry of Magic's law enforcement very low? We can only monitor the use of magic by underage wizards within a general range. As for other things, Vader thought about the Ministry of Magic's performance in the plot that the Ministry of Magic's hips are getting bigger year by year. Other things are like not very good either. Don't despise the Ministry of Magic, Vader. Ferdinand warned, there is no law enforcement agency that is not a violent agency. If you cannot face it, it is easy to make wrong judgments. Wade said seriously, I understand, Dad. Indeed, the Ministry of Magic, which he now despises, can imprison Dumbledore's professors in Azkaban and also has the power to expel students from Hogwarts. This power has not been weakened much because of the bloat, corruption and incompetence of the Ministry of Magic. On the contrary, incompetent and corrupt people prefer to abuse their power. The next day, the Gray family got up early because they were going shopping in Diagon Alley today, which was destined to take a long time. Still going to Gringotts to change money first. Ferdinand had already prepared a heavy bag. Those goblins don't like paper money. He explained to Wade, if it is paper money, it can only be exchanged for 20 galleons at most. The amount of coins is higher, but if you use gold, there is no limit. The goblins all very fond of gold. I don't need that much money, Dad. Vader persuaded, Hogwarts provides food and housing, and some students only need 10 galleons a year. That's because they can only buy second-hand goods. They can't buy snacks. They even have to save ink. Ferdinand touched his head, your shortcoming is that you are too sensible, Wade, sometimes you can be more arbitrary. And aren't you learning alchemy? Fiona shook her finger, don't try to lie to me. Even if I don't know magic, I know that it will definitely cost a lot of money to learn alchemy, and Hogwarts doesn't do it either. Maybe we can provide you with all kinds of materials for practice without any restrictions. Wade pursed his lips and said softly, thank you, Dad, Mom, I love you. He has been introverted since he was a child, and it is difficult for him to say I love you, an expression that ordinary children are accustomed to. Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Gray were very surprised. They looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. I love you too, baby. Fiona said softly. On the way afterwards, Fiona kept holding Vader's hand tightly. Switching to galleons, Ferdinand left for a while, and Fiona accompanied Vader to Madame Malkin's robe shop. Hogwarts uniforms are all loose robes, and they still fit well even if Vader has grown 3 centimeters taller. But considering that he would definitely continue to grow taller next semester, Fiona decided to order 2 more uniforms for him. I also need a dress robe, Fiona said when discussing the lining style with Mrs. Malkin, just a simple one. The color shouldn't be too showy. Wade doesn't like it. We should get it this afternoon at the latest. If you can't make it in time, ready-made clothes are also available. Dress robe? Wade, who was serving as a clothing display stand nearby, said. Silly question, Vader. Fiona said softly, as if speaking to a child, when you go to Professor Murray's party tomorrow, are you still going to wear the school uniform? Oh, you should have been earlier, tell me so I can customize a suitable one. Vader actually felt that there was nothing wrong with Hogwarts robes, and the gowns displayed in Madame Malkin's robe shop were very similar to his school robes. Of course, this cannot be said, otherwise Fiona will use at least 1,000 words to prove that there is a huge difference between them. Vader could only keep his mouth shut obediently and listen to Mrs. Malkin say to his mother, "Don't worry, Mrs. Grey. I guarantee that you will get his new robe at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the latest. Let's take a look at the dress first. Style. Which color do you like? Ah, this color matches his skin tone very well. Your aesthetic is really good. What are the requirements for accessories for boys? It doesn't need to be too complicated or too many, it's noble and elegant. The best. Mom. Wade couldn't help but said. Fiona looked back at her son, sighed regretfully in his protesting eyes, put down the useless but shiny things such as necklaces, bracelets, and rings inlaid with gems in her hands, and said, just choose cufflinks. Well, just cufflinks, nothing else is needed. Mrs. Malkin put away the other things with a smile, without any sign of impatience, and spent a long time with Fiona choosing cufflinks. They finally decided on the dress, and Madame Malkin said as if she suddenly remembered, My dear, little Mr. Grey can't wear his old shoes with his new dress, can he? Do you want to take a look at our latest dragon skin boots? Vader stared blankly at the ceiling, regretting that he had not brought a book with him. He was now looking forward to having other guests come in, so that Madame Malkin would be busy. Otherwise, Fiona could spend the whole day here. Suddenly the doorbell rang, and Wade immediately turned his head, only to see Ferdinand coming in with a newspaper. Ferdinand nodded to Wade and asked, You haven't bought the clothes yet, okay? Nothing. Wade couldn't help but sigh, I'm choosing shoes. It took a lot of effort for him to resist the urge to complain to his father. Have you taken the measurements? I measured it as soon as I walked in. That's good. Ferdinand said to his wife, Fiona, you choose slowly, and I will take Wade to buy other things. You have ordered the clothes and are waiting for us at Madame Malkin's place. Fiona waved her hand and said, Okay. Don't make me wait too long. When Grey and his son went out, Ferdinand said to his son, I ordered the Daily Prophet, I ordered a copy for you, and they will send it to the school by owl. From now on, you must get used to paying attention to political affairs. Vader nodded. The father and son walked around Diagon Alley and bought other things in less than half an hour. Wade also left the names and catalogs of several shop owners so that he could use OWL to buy the items he needed after arriving at school. Especially potion materials, Hogwarts only provides the most basic ones for free, and rare and expensive materials are only provided in small quantities when taking relevant courses. It is impossible for young wizards like him to practice freely. When they returned to the robe shop, Fiona had just chosen her shoes and was sitting drinking tea while flipping through a magazine called Wizard Weekly. When she heard the bell ringing at the door, she turned her head and immediately smiled brightly. Wade smiled. Before he could speak, he saw Ferdinand, who was walking behind him, striding over. He lowered his head and asked softly, Have you finished shopping? Are you tired? Fiona, who had not stepped out of the robe shop, stretched her arms and said, Yeah, shopping is really tiring. What should we eat for lunch? Isn't there a good French restaurant nearby? How about eating there? Order a foie gras steak and grilled cod.